Welcome to the 3 Championship Drive podcast on YouTube, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Follow me on X at Lance Caporossi, the same way you see it spelled on the screen. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the video, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan. All right, and please welcome our special guest, DeHave, to the podcast. If you're looking for NBA content, there's none better than our guy, DeHave. Give him a follow. Link will be in the description. But hey, DeHave, introduce yourself again for the new people.
Well, thank you. That was very nice. That was a very good intro for me. I run a YouTube channel. My name is DeHave, youtube.com/DeHave. That's pretty much it. I make NBA content, pretty frequently, a few times a week, I'd say. Cover all things NBA almost every day. It used to be every day. Now it's almost every day.
So we have DeHave on the podcast because we wanted to have an NBA fan's perspective of the Detroit Pistons, and he happened to go to the only Detroit Pistons win this season against the Philadelphia 76ers. So I think it's only fitting to start it off.
Don't laugh at me.
Were the boos fair for Tobias Harris? And did you participate in those boos?
So I should mention I'm a diehard 76ers fan, have been my whole life. So to answer your question, Lance, last time I was on this podcast, I said that I wouldn't do it. You might be able to tell where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
I said that I wouldn't do it, and it was most Sixers fans would, and I said I wouldn't. I kind of might have changed my mind about that since the last time we spoke. I went to the game, and I did participate in the boos. I am, sincerely apologetic for my actions. To answer your question, I don't think it's fair that people boo Tobias Harris, and that makes me a hypocrite. But I will say, Tobias Harris, like all of us, took the contract that the Sixers gave him. We overpaid for him, but at the end of the day, I would have signed it. You would have signed it. And so he shouldn't be booed for that. I think he, did his time here as a pro. He, really did everything he could, right? And so I did boo him, but the reason I changed my mind was because at the end of the day, I just don't think it's that deep. Like, the Philly fans, you have a bad tenure here, we're probably going to boo you. And I kind of feel like, that's just kind of the mentality. It's nothing too, cerebral going on with that decision for me. So yeah, it's not fair that we booed him and that I booed him, but also being a 76ers fan isn't fair, I would say. And so unfortunately he kind of had to get the brunt end of that, but hey, man, it is what it is, right?
Well, I'm glad you guys booed him though, because I think an 18 and 14 game was pretty damn good for him.
Yeah. I regretted it immediately after doing it. I will say that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's so unfair to boo a former player because, like, some of it all is kind of just – it's kind of weird to say this, but, like, it is kind of just in good fun. Like, it's part of sports. You know what I mean? Like,
it's not that deep, yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're not, like, calling him names or calling out his family or throwing stuff at him, you're totally fine. A boo's fine.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that.
Just booze, yep.
That's all they were. So this is a question I really wanted to ask you because both teams have young guards. Philadelphia has Tyrese Maxey. The Detroit Pistons have Cade Cunningham. But do you think the NBA and maybe the media and the fans that watch the game have been unfair to Cade compared to a guy like Maxey? Because Cade, there's just a lot of talk like, is he deserving of being the former number 1 overall pick? Is he a true franchise player when he has had the worst supporting cast up until this point? Then on the other hand, you have someone like Tyrese Maxey, who again, very good season right now. Efficiency's gone down. I think it's like 37 and 22% from the field and from the 3-point line, but still giving you 31. But the talk around Tyrese Maxey and some other young guards in the NBA was these are legit franchise players. It doesn't matter if the other all-stars are hurt or not. They're going to be able to carry the team. And the dialogue was just different between them. So my question again, it wasn't unfair to Cade Cunningham.
I think that I would say yes and no in two different kind of respects, and I'll explain it. So as far as Tyrese Maxey comparison, I don't think it's a great comparison because in my opinion, as much as I love Tyrese, he's, a great player for my team and an awesome guy as well off the court. I just think Tyrese, he's the type of player that, he is kind of an all-star caliber guy and at his best, maybe all NBA caliber guy. I don't know if I'd say that, but I think Tyrese is best, as a complementary star, like a second or third option. I think he's best playing off of another star. I don't think that's going to be the case for Cade Cunningham in his career. I think he's going to separate himself from guys like Tyrese Maxey who might need, a little bit more help. As far as the conversation about some other guards, I will say, the criticism, I wouldn't necessarily criticize Cade, but I think when you're comparing him to guys like, I could just name a few: SGA, Trey Young, Luka Doncic, some of these guys who are around the same age, but have, just quite frankly, accomplished a little bit more. I get that Cade Cunningham has had, extremely subpar supporting casts, and I'm not even going to blame any of the losing really on him at all. But, I don't know that Trey Young or early in Luka's career, or even early in SGA's career, I don't know that they had, great, playoff caliber sporting casts either. I think they might have done a little bit more with maybe a little bit better of a cast. And so I just think at the end of the day, Cade Cunningham has to, if he wants to be in those conversations, he has to step up and elevate his team against all odds. Like, it has to be one of those things where we don't necessarily expect you to make the playoffs in this Eastern Conference this year, but can you really elevate this team's win total? Can you make the guys around you so much better that it's undeniable how great you are? These are the things he has to answer. But as far as, him individually, I just think he's an extraordinary player, and I think he will do that. I just think it's going to take some, some more learning and growing, and maybe a better supporting cast, right?
No, I agree with that. Definitely a better supporting cast for him to elevate his game to reach the heights that I think we all know he's capable of reaching, because we've seen glimpses of it in his short career. But Zach, I wanted to ask you the same question. How do you feel about that? Do you think the NBA and the media and the fans have been unfair to Cade Cunningham?
It's just a really unfortunate situation is really all it is. Like, is just being on a team that's just not as successful at the moment. But right now, if you look at it, I mean, we could talk about stats and we could talk about wins and losses. But right now, with Tyrese Maxey being the guy in Philadelphia, without a Paul George that has not played yet for them, and Joel Embiid not playing, their records are damn near the same. So if we're talking about not giving any praise to Cade Cunningham or praising Tyrese Maxey more, I think it's just a situation that Tyrese, he's more spoken for because of the team that he's on, with the superstars that he plays around. But like right now, you can't argue that maybe the Pistons and the 76ers, without those two guys playing, they are a very similar team. And right now they have the same record and near the same stats. Like, the only thing that Cade has this year that's been really rough is his turnovers are just horrible right now. Tyrese Maxey's been taking care of the ball a little bit more. But like I said, I think it's just a really unfortunate scenario. Like, Cade's not talked about just because they're only talking about how we win 14 games. They're not talking about the positives that happen in his career. But he's starting to show a little something. So maybe with him getting a better supporting cast for this year, it's not as good as what the Sixers have if they're all healthy. But if he can put something together, he has every right to have the same amount of respect as other guards.
Yeah, I totally, agree with that. I think, like I said, I think what you really want to see from Cade, I think, at least from my perspective, is just him kind of take control of that team as a leader. And like I said, elevate them. It's not always just about winning, but, making your teammates better. And I'm not saying he doesn't do that now, but you guys kind of know what I mean. Like, can he really take charge of this franchise and say, I'm the guy and I'm going to prove it? And, it might not be a playoff berth this year. It might not even, look like everybody else's leadership. But by the end of the year, I think what you want to see from Cade is, unquestionably, he is your franchise player, and he's got to really prove that. I don't know what that's going to look like necessarily, but maybe you guys could help me out as Pistons fans. But I just think, those other guys that I mentioned, SGA, Luka, Trey, some of these guys, they all kind of prove that around this time, compared to Cade. And so that's kind of what I want to see out of him.
So far, Cade has averaged 25 points per game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 block, almost a steal, shooting 48% from the field, 41% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per game. It's getting to the line. It's still, I feel like they're not giving him a fair whistle, but 3.5 attempts from the free throw line per game, shooting 85.7%. So, he's putting up great numbers. The wins haven't translated yet. He's finally getting some help from Jaden Ivey. Tobias Harris, he's been slow to go. But my question to you guys now is, has Cade finally arrived in the NBA? Do you see an all-star season from him? Do you think he'll get that nod, or do you even think he can take it a step further if the Pistons get a few more wins and make an All-NBA team?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think the question whether or not he's arrived, I think absolutely. That people might say, "Oh, well, you just said that, he's got to take that next leap and blah blah blah." That doesn't mean that he isn't that caliber of player. The only reason we're even mentioning him in these conversations with guys compared to earlier in their careers like Luke Aschier and Trae Young, Tyrese Halliburton, these guys, is because he's that great of a player individually. And the supporting cast is so bad that the wins aren't there. But when you're talking about Cade Cunningham's production that you just mentioned, that is all NBA numbers right there. The problem is for an all-star or an all NBA, first of all, the fan voting is just kind of ridiculous in the first place. And to make the reserves, you got to be kind of, around a winning record a lot of the time. And so you don't see a lot of kind of bottom lottery teams, which hopefully by the All-Star break, the Pistons aren't. But if they're around 500 and he has those numbers, he's an all-star, no question for me.
Are you going to vote for him when the all-star ballots come out?
I'd have to see what everybody else looks like. I don't know.
Okay.
Over Tyrese Maxey right now, I 100% would. I would say that.
Dang,
If I had to vote today, I would. Yeah, he's been better. Yeah.
What about you, Zach? Do you think Cade has finally arrived?
He's been here. I bought a jersey. He's here. I mean, it's just we're gonna just nag about it consistently on a year in and year out basis until he gets some guys around him that are going to produce at a consistent basis. I mean, everyone that watches this, I'm really hoping that you also watch all the games. I watch them as much as I can. I haven't been on the pod recently just because work has just been chaotic, but I still listen to good old George and Gregory on my headphones while the games are going on, and I'm doing my best to pay attention to them. But with Cade right now, almost all the games you could say, except for maybe one of them, we had an opportunity. Yeah. We played Boston down to the wire. Like they're playing well. It's just the problem right now with Detroit is once the games start to get out of hand, then they really get out of hand. And we saw that with the Knicks. So, but to answer your question with Cade arriving, yeah, he's here and he's ready and he knows he is and he's playing well. I just think that maybe it's not a pressure thing, but they're asking him to do a lot of stuff, man. And not saying that he can't, but to play 78 games or maybe 77 games this year with taking some rest because they're asking him to like provide so much for this team, it might be too much for him. I think he can live up to the pressure, but just maybe the physicality of it, of having to go and score 29 points, 7-7 or 8-8 every single game, it might take a toll on him.
I will say Lance, I just want to say really quick, just to add one quick thing. In today's modern NBA, it's not like of the early 2000s, mid 2000s, where one guy can get you to the playoffs anymore. You look around the Eastern Conference in particular these days, and some of the top teams, even kind of the middle teams, your Orlando Magics, your Miami Heats, your Indiana Pacers, multiple All-Stars. And so it takes a village to make a playoff team these days in the Eastern Conference. And so Cade can't do it alone. And in today's league, you can't expect any player to do it alone. And so I totally agree with that.
No, the NBA is way too talented right now for just one or two players to. I mean, we saw the type of team the Boston Celtics had last year. I mean, Derek White, Porzingis, Al Horford, even at his age, Drew Holiday, the Jays. Like, I mean, they had a deep squad. Peyton Pritchard,
man.
Yeah, they could all get minutes.
Yeah.
Sam Hauser, they could all be key rotation pieces on a lot of teams in the NBA. You got to be 8, 9, 10 deep to win an NBA championship today. And the Pistons just aren't there. My thing with Cade is I think he has arrived. I'd still think it feels like to me this is kind of like similar career arc to Devin Booker, where he puts up these incredible numbers. He looks good in Phoenix, but there's just not enough of a supporting cast for him to really make a name for himself in the NBA. Like people are like watching, but they're not closely watching. They're like, it's an empty stats guy. The team is just so bad. Someone has to shoot the ball. That's what I feel like the narrative is around Cade Cunningham right now, even though Jaden Ivey has been playing better, but it's still just 6 games for Jaden Ivey. We'll see what he can do for the rest of the season. But now that's going to bring me to my next point. How do you feel about their supporting cast, and what are your thoughts particularly on Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, and Isaiah Stewart?
Well, just to speak on my experience, from going to the game the other night, seeing those guys in person, and I got to start with Jaden Ivey. I mean, for one, I was a little bit surprised in person how I thought he was a little bit smaller than he actually was. He's a big guy. I mean, this is a quality size NBA two guard, and he had a great game that night against my Sixers. I think had maybe either the best or second best performance of the night. He had a lot of instant offense kind of moments there. He played great. Jalen Duren, just that night had a rough one there. I don't know if he scored a basket. He ended up fouling out. He could seem like he couldn't go, a couple possessions without racking up a foul, getting taken out. Isaiah Stewart had an amazing game. I thought he totally kind of just dismembered my front court, to be honest with you guys, without Joel Embiid, to be fair, but he totally ate Drummond alive. I mean, he was excellent on the perimeter defensively. He was, super versatile in that way, switching, right? And we saw a lot of, big time effort and motor plays from Isaiah Stewart from the Motor City. And honestly, his motor just, it was so impressive to a guy like Drummond, who his knack is getting on the offensive glass, and he just dominated Drummond as a much smaller player. And I thought he played excellent. The supporting cast in general, obviously Tobias Harris was pretty motivated, I would say, coming into Philly here, dumb people like me booing him. And so, overall, I thought everybody had a good game, to be honest with you guys.
Yeah, Jalen Duren, no shots, 2 free throws, missed both, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, fouled out.
I was very happy about all that, to be honest with you, after game.
That's good. He's been, man, Jalen Duren is such an interesting player because dude has all the talent in the world. We've heard this about so many players throughout the league, but he looks physically like, I mean, if you're standing him next to Dwight Howard, I don't know if you could tell the difference until they get on the basketball court. He is that physically imposing, but the effort just has not been there game to game. And it feels like it kind of looks like he's playing like he's the odd man out in Detroit. And against Philly, it really looked like he was the odd man out. Isaiah Stewart, in my opinion, even though he doesn't give you the vertical spacing that Jalen Duren does, and definitely doesn't bring the same athleticism, there might need to be change in the starting lineup where Stewart might need to start at the 5 spot. I mean, if he's not starting, he at least needs to be closing the games. And JB Bickerstaff needs to figure out a way to get him to shoot threes. He took years learning how to shoot them, and he shot, I think he's like shot 3 this entire season. It's crazy. But Zach, we've been talking about Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren, and a bunch of these guys all throughout the offseason. Now that we've got to see them play, what are your thoughts on those on the roster and those 3 guys in particular?
Well, Jaden Ivey's made me a good amount of money with all of his overs that he's cleared for me because he's playing out of his mind. FanDuel Sportsbook, you giving him 14.5 points is just ridiculous. You guys need to stop that. Yeah. And he's shooting the 3 ball, I think at 43.7% or something like that. He's knocking down, he's knocking down shots, man. This guy is the narrative that we drew a little bit about him. We didn't insult him, so don't make a comment about it. I'm not insulting the guy. But we painted something about him not having the type of skill set to be able to be a Cade Cunningham running mate. Like, we said that, and we kind of tried to speak it a little bit into existence until he is now putting our foot in our mouth and showing us that he can play, man. I don't like him at the 1. Him running the point is a little off for me because I still think that he needs someone else to bring the ball up the court. Like, even if it's a Malik Beasley, which I think he'd be fine doing that because he has been doing a little bit of ball handling for us. But I love the way that Jaden is playing, just so damn angry that he wants, dude. As much DeHave, you probably haven't watched every Pistons game, and I understand if you have not. But Jaden Ivey has a problem with the rim, dude. He is pissed. The rim took his girl home and did something, and he's a madman right now. And I love the way he is attacking, even defensively. He's not shying away from anybody. And I am very impressed with what he brings to the table. Now, Beef Stew, I don't like him. I haven't really liked Beef Stew. It is what it is. But he did play his role in that Sixers game. He had a phenomenal game. But with beef stew with me, it's either an on or off. There is no middle. He's either playing really well in getting his minutes, or it's just we're subbing him in for 6 to get Duren back on the court.
So you got him and Duren both the same kind of issue there, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Yeah, and it's just, and with Duren, man, Lance, you think he listens to the outside voices, the people talking about him? Because I think it's affecting this guy, man. I think he's really taken a hit. I mean, there's not a lot of people in the Pistons fan base. I think there's like maybe 5 or 6 podcasts, one including us, and I doubt they listen to what we have to say. But can you tell that he has a chip on his shoulder that he just can't get off? Like he just doesn't. Like you're right. He doesn't look like he wants to belong in the system.
I think part of it is there's probably some outside elements to it. You're a millionaire. You're 20 years old. You have
super young.
Your entire life in front of you. There's more to the game. I totally get it. But also you're in a coaching change. You're trying to find your role with this team. Like last year, it seemed like at times they were just trying to feed him like he was the number 2 for the Detroit Pistons behind Cade. And now it's more of like, I need you to pick it up defensively. That's what you have to do in the NBA. And you're not going to get fed. You're not going to do this. We're not going to look for you offensively until you make it happen defensively. But also there were some clips floating around on the internet where he goes and sets a screen and then he doesn't know what to do after he does it. Like, I don't know if the offense doesn't want him to roll. Like, it just seems like he's just unsure of what JB Bickerstaff is asking him. And I know JB Bickerstaff talked to Omari Sankofa III and said something along the lines like, I got to continue to coach him. I got to continue to teach him. I got to continue to talk to him. And I got to reassure him basically that he's our guy, but I got to work with him a little bit more to let him know what I need from him on this team. So I just think it's more of a coaching change, and he's just a young guy in the NBA playing the greatest sport in the world and just having the world at his feet. I think there's a lot of that in there. I don't want to I hate to say that I think he's the odd man out, but like the way he's playing, that's just the way it feels.
I think that's pretty fair. I mean, you guys would know more than me on this. I just want to add a couple things on the supporting cast really quick. So 2 things from the game that I noticed, or a couple things. Jaden Ivey's off the ball role, he looked really competent in. He looked pretty natural moving freely without the basketball in his hands, whether it's coming off of DHOs or flying around those screens ready to shoot, like you said, Zach, getting to the rim in a late shot clock situation. He just looked really comfortable in that role. And so at the 1, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think you necessarily want him to have a lot of, a ton of playmaking responsibilities. I'm not saying he can't be a good playmaker. I just don't think that's the kind of, he's a scorer to me mainly. And so that was really impressive. I think the way he moved off the ball was really impressive from a young player. I think that's a extremely valuable skill set as someone who you'd like to see be the running mate of Cade in the future. Another thing I noticed about the Pistons, just going into the game and just kind of into the season as well, and it really showed in the Sixers game, was you guys have a lot of shooters. I mean, a lot of good, competent shooters. Tim Hardaway shot the ball exceptionally well in that game. Tobias Harris, when he gets hot, he can be a super competent shooter from the corner. I know he struggled early on, but catch and shoots are one of the things he does well generally. Malik Beasley looked good, and these are like difficult shots these guys can take. Beasley and Hardaway Jr., they can come off of screens on the move, shooting the basketball from 3. And I was just really impressed by the shooting overall. You guys shot the ball well, I thought, from 3. Cade, obviously talented. Ivy shooting the ball well, like you said, Zach. And so, the shooting is really a benefit to this team. I think has helped Cade in the playmaking department, even if the turnovers are a little bit high. And then just the last thing, while I did boo Tobias Harris, I did, stand up and cheer for Paul Reed, who didn't play in this game, unfortunately. But, they did show a little segment, in a stoppage and welcome back, Paul Reed kind of thing. And everybody kind of stood up and cheered. And so, maybe we'll get to see him play a little bit throughout the season. I don't know.
I feel like there's a change coming, and I feel like Paul Reed's going to get some more minutes here in a few games.
I hope
he's
so.
He's like Isaiah Stewart in a way, but he's just a little unpolished. But the thing you said about Jaden Ivey coming off of like screens and DHOs, taking one dribble, he's at the rim. This is something me and Zach talked about during the offseason. We wanted to see Jaden Ivey move without the ball like he was doing at Purdue. That's
he
what
looks
we
good at
to
it
see.
at the Sixers game. Yeah,
Oh
totally.
my God, dude.
Has he been better, do you think?
Oh yeah, so much better than what Monty Williams and even to a lesser extent Dwayne Casey. I know during his rookie year Cade wasn't playing other than 12 games because he was out with an injury, so he was asked to play more of a point guard role. But off the ball, the way he's shooting the ball, which those percentages are going to come down, he's not going to shoot 48% or 43?
43.
Yeah, 43.8%. He's not going to shoot that way from the
anywhere above 36. I think you're cool with.
Oh, yeah. If he's around league average, 36, 37%, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it will be. But the way he's shooting the ball unconsciously, like no hitch in the shot has changed. This has just been such an improvement from Jaden Ivey and something we've been talking about. Tim Hardaway, though, I just pulled up his numbers. He's shooting 48.6% from the 3-point line and 6 attempts per game, dude.
He looked amazing in that Sixers game. Yeah.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone and they were like, he's done in the NBA. This dude has not been the same since he's in the drum. Like, dude, it's just preseason right now. Give the guy
he didn't play. He got out of the rotation in Dallas last season. I know it was a finals team, but like, you know what I mean? I thought I didn't think he was done. I just thought this is one of his last contracts for sure. But he's come out, professional and dominating from the behind the arc, like you said. So
13 attempts. Just 13 points per game. He's only 32 years old. We'll see what happens.
Talented scorer too. Yeah, shooter.
Very. So let me ask you this question, because you are a fan of, when they're healthy, they're one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. So you've been able to watch a Sixers team go from the process era to, title contention era. We'll just call even the Sixers. Well, you know what I mean. We'll put, title with small, all lowercase letters, not big, not big letters. So when you watch the Detroit Pistons, and I'm sure you've caught a few more games since you've been doing all the NBA content, but when do you think the Detroit Pistons will be ready to compete in the Eastern Conference?
So I think that's a tough question to answer without having the plans that the front office do. We can sit here and spec, because this was kind of hard for us as Sixers fans too. Like, it seemed like every time you think you're starting to put it together, they go, "Oh, one more year, we'll get a lottery pick here. Hopefully, get a top pick. This is going to be a good draft class coming up here." But it's tough to say. I think if you just look at the roster right now, I think you clearly have your one in Cade Cunningham, and that's pretty much the hardest part. If you want to say, "Oh, well, at best he's a 1, but maybe at the end of the day he might end up a 2." This is still a cornerstone of your franchise, no question about it. Supreme talent here in Cade Cunningham. Now you have to find the number 2 option. That could take some time. Whether that's Jaden Ivey, whether that's Jalen Duren, we'll have to see. I think you're a couple of years away. I think you are this year's lottery away. Hopefully you guys have a Cinderella playoff run here. I'm really rooting for you guys, but I think it's a lottery season this year, and it's most likely a play-in lottery kind of season next year, but it all kind of depends on those young guys' growth. It's just really hard to predict. There's a lot of things, as a Sixers fan, that we dealt with that we just couldn't have possibly predicted. Certain draft picks not working out, certain people forgetting how to shoot, GMs in and out. You guys have seemed to figure that out a little bit, but we'll have to see. It's at the end of the day, it's just a lot of it depends on the development of some of the guys on the roster, and so that's just kind of what we're going to have to see. Sorry, I didn't really answer that well, I feel like, but I tried.
No, you're good. Sorry, my
thing,
computer just went out for a brief seconds.
So, it still says recording for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's still recording right now. That's just it. But this will just be like, it's fine. It's great podcasting.
Good thing I didn't answer your question. That's good.
No. The whole thing, you got the whole thing. It was just literally the last second. That's
okay. I was hoping
Yeah.
it cut out midway through because I really struggle on that.
Dude, you're totally fine though.
I'm joking around.
I still think the Pistons are a few years away from really competing in the East. I think Trajan Langdon's. We've talked about this, and so a lot of Pistons fans have to. This kind of seems to be the theme that we're all following this year. Is that this is a prove-it year. This is okay. We know we have Cade Cunningham. He's the number one option. He's the franchise, but we need to see who on this team is going to be here down the line. We got to see what the future holds. But also, this is Trajan Langdon looking at this upcoming draft class, being like, you know what? I kind of got to get one of them top picks to see, and really to build this team the right way. That's what I think is going to happen this year. But Zach, what are your thoughts? Do you think the Detroit Pistons are close to competing in the East, or how long do you think it will take?
Very long time. The East, it's just where I'm at, because the East is basketball. Just nowadays, man, there's so many powerhouses, and it's East and West. It's not. I mean, maybe we could kind of, because it's don't they have there's like a wild card play-in now, right?
It's a play-in.
Yeah, maybe a play-in team. But just with looking at all these teams in the East and how strong everybody is, man, I don't think we're there. Like, we're not there. And I'm about, I would say, 34 to 40 games out, seeing where this record is, to tank for a Cooper flag. But it doesn't matter, because we're going to draft fifth anyway.
I was just going to say, if depending on who you draft, it could take 2 years sooner than you think. Like, this is what I'm saying. It's so hard to predict.
Yeah, you don't know.
You just never know. And hopefully Cooper flag for you guys. I really do hope that.
I mean,
you need one first overall pick. I mean, come on.
Well, we need.
You got Cade, but
yeah.
but it's been, come on, fifth last season. And what is this?
I mean, I think even if you get the fifth pick in this draft class, you're technically getting the number one in any other class, just how deep it is. So
right.
I'm totally fine as long as they don't lose the first round pick. I think that is owned by Minnesota now. I mean, it's heavily protected, but still, like, I would rather the Detroit Pistons land somewhere in the top 9 and give that pick up to the.
Oh, yeah. And another thing to note is you guys have salary cap still, I believe. And so you probably have a couple expiring contracts. And so, like, that's another thing that could factor in. What if we see, there's just so many things up for, speculation. What if we see a big leap from either Duran or Ivy, and you start winning games midway through the season? All of a sudden, now you're in, lottery. You'll still be around the lottery with that draft pick, and you'll have money. Maybe someone looks at, good free agent looks at this team and says, "Wow, this is a good young team here. I kind of want to, see what we can work something out." And all of a sudden, you're looking at a play-in or playoff team. It's just so hard to predict. But I do think if I had to put money on it, let's say, I think 2 years is a good window.
Okay. Yeah, I think the Pistons have $10.2 million to spend right now in salary cap. And I just don't – I would love for them – I said this – I'd love for them to go for a point guard. I love Cade, but, he had like a 9 turnover game, then I think a 7 turnover game. The turnovers, they can be pretty bad for Cade. I would like for them to get another ball handler that can take pressure off of him, and you could play with Jaden Ivey, because I was comfortable with Jaden Ivey playing the point guard because I didn't think he'd be doing it a ton during the season anyways. I thought he would just be like, maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes here without Cade on the floor. He's going to bring the ball up the floor and initiate the offense. I think he's just a great number 2. I think that's where he belongs. I think he can be a second, third playmaker on the team. But if you're asking him to run the show, if you're asking him to set up the offense and create plays for others other than driving and kicking out, it's not very good. And I just think you need Jaden Ivey just to focus on scoring and be that number 2 to Cade Cunningham. So I would like to see them sign a point guard. But as an NBA fan, and you just watch the Pistons, what do you think they should do with that $10.2 million? If you were given the reins to add a player or make a trade for the Pistons, what move would you make?
Well, I think it's hard to say now because you're not exactly in a situation where you're ready to compete. But with the 10 million, it's hard to say, but I'd be curious to see how much they had, next season with the expiring contracts. But I think what this team really needs, just looking at the roster, is like a two-way wing. I mean, this is a wing league, and I don't mean a two-way wing like maybe if Asar Thompson shoots better, maybe if Tobias plays better defense. I mean like a 15 to 20 a night guy on like all NBA defense, like a OG Anunoby, that type of player. I think if you have a lockdown wing defender with, good shooting and, shot creation, a Brandon Ingram, someone of that caliber, I think this is a wing league, and you're starting to see a trend here where all of the great teams in the league, some of the best ones, you look at the Celtics, you look at some of these up and coming teams like the Magic, my Sixers going out and getting Paul George, the Knicks having two, all defensive caliber wings that can shoot. This is where the league's headed. And I just don't see that type of player on the Pistons right now. And I think that's, the hole in this kind of lineup right now, if I had to say.
Yeah, I think you're right I do think the Pistons ultimately need to go out and find an all-star to pair with Cade Cunningham, whether that's Brandon Ingram or a Julius Randle or, someone like a Karl Anthony Towns, just someone else that can, take the pressure off of Cade. That would be great.
I'll tell you who's supposedly on the trade block that kind of fits the bill here is Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know how we feel about him here, but kind of an interesting athlete, type of, scorer that I thought I'd bring up.
I would rather, I like the name, I like his game, but I would much rather the Detroit Pistons in particular go for an established player. That's what I would want to see.
I agree. Brandon Ingram would be perfect, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Perfect.
I love Brandon Ingram.
The playmaking as well, so take that away from Cade, and wow, that's a dream fit, yeah.
But Zach, what about you? What do you think the Pistons need to do, or what would you do with that $10 million they have in cap space?
I don't know. Buy some more Little Caesars pizzas. Feed the homeless with it, dude. This team's not there yet, bro. We're not.
You got to pay Monty Williams' contract.
Yeah. Just how about you put that on part of that check that we've got to write for a while? Like, I don't know, man. It's so tough to sit and watch this team. Like, it really is, because like I said, we were so close a couple times. Like you think that you're going to see the breakthrough, and then the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter happen, and you're like, oh, we're back again. Like, what the fuck just happened? So I don't know. When it comes to what I think of adding anybody to this roster, it's like, yeah, we could use another ball handler. In my opinion, what we talked about in Summer League and we talked about kind of in preseason, I like Dennis Jenkins, man. I want to see this guy play. I mean, I might be crazy here, and that's my stupid hot take, except for the two people that like Dennis Jenkins. I think you should give him an opportunity. Sasser's gotten a little bit of minutes, but we haven't ran another technically quote-unquote point guard. We just have run Cade and Jaden and Tim Hardaway and Beasley with the ball handling. So, I mean, I would like to add another guard. I still think, like me and Lance talked before you got in here, that maybe the Ron Holland thing was a bad idea. Maybe we should have went a different way with this. Maybe get a big so we have more depth at center. But I don't know, dude. It's really tough to analyze here. And if you want to bring in somebody, that's great. But who the hell wants to go to Detroit right now? We need Cade. We kind of need Cade to keep progressing. We need Cade to show that he can be a leader and be like a huge force in this league, to be able to bring in somebody that thinks there's success in Detroit. Because without Cade getting any better, we're not going to get anybody, because no one's going to want to go and play with a team that has been at the same level for the last 3 years.
And just one more quick thing. Sorry, Lance. I keep cutting you off here at the end. I totally agree with you, the proven talent thing. I mean, this is a team that if you look at the roster, you say, oh, there's a lot of guys with high upside here. Some log jams at position. We talked about last time on, that podcast. And this is kind of just a cluttered roster with a lot of unproven talent. And you say, well, too many, good high upside players can never be a bad thing. I just think there's a lot of this stuff is just too many cooks in the kitchen, and we got to start to sort out the men from the boys here and get some more proven talent on this roster. I think that's what they attempted to do in free agency this summer, but at the end of the day, this team just, they need more proven talent, like you said, Lance.
Yeah, I was looking at so there's this Tyus Jones for the Phoenix Suns. He had said that he was offered more money from the Washington Wizards
Saw that.
and the Detroit Pistons,
Saw that.
but he decided to take less to go play for the Phoenix Suns. I thought the move last year by Troy Weaver to bring in Monte Morris was the right move. And it's unfortunate they traded him. I would love a Monte Morris on this team being the backup point guard, a guy that you could slide in with Cade or Jaden Ivey that can run the show, keep the turnovers down, and get everybody involved and hit an open shot if you need. That is like, if I'm spending the $10 million right now, that is what I am trying to find in free agency, whether it's Dennis Smith Jr. or Markelle Fultz, just someone that I can rely on that isn't Cade and Jaden Ivey. They may not be the most efficient scorers. That's fine. I don't need that. I just need someone to keep the turnovers down and run the offense. And a guy with enough size I can play with either or. But if my dream, my wish for this team this year would be to unload some of the talent and bring a proven player, that would be ideal for me.
Yeah, and just a name that I thought was interesting that came to mind, who actually signed with a different team that would have fit this description perfectly. Jordan McLaughlin was previously with Minnesota, very high or low assist to turnover ratio. I don't know which one, the good one. Super high assist to turnover at whatever it is. Just a good stabilizer. He signed with the Sacramento Kings, unfortunately, but a guy like that, I know exactly what you're saying. Don't do anything crazy. Just run don't turn the ball over, take care of the basketball, make good decisions. I totally get you.
Even someone like Javon Carter, he played 72 games with the Bulls the last year and he's only played one today. Like, he's kind of buried on the Chicago Bulls. I think he would like a fresh start with the team in Detroit. It's only 5 hours away from Chicago. You know what I'm saying? It'd be an easy trade for him. I would like
someone like Kyle Lowry, who, we re-signed, he's perfect for that role. I mean, just a smart, heady player. I get it. I don't want him to, but you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
That type of player.
Bill.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it. Appreciate you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Before I do the closing outro, DeHave, tell everybody where they can follow you at.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to, no pressure. YouTube.com/DeHave. Like I said, we cover all things NBA, every single team. We do fun, creative stuff all the time. Could be on the Pistons next video. Who knows? I know, but you guys don't know. And just a ton of fun stuff. NBA content, objective, unbiased takes from this Sixers fan who just happened to boo Tobias Harris, and hopefully you guys don't hate me for that, but youtube.com/DeHave, everything else, up to you. And thank you for having me on, guys. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. I'll provide the links in the description below. Thank you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do us a favor, go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and hit that follow button. After you hit the follow button, rate with 5 stars, leave a review by telling us what you would do with the $10.2 million in cap space. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.